Welcome to Whisperer of Madness. If you're enjoying the story, consider liking the video and subscribing. It really helps grow the channel and this community. Alter the raging flames continued to blaze. The piercing screams and wails never ended, accompanied by the roars and manic laughter of pirates. Barbarian corpses piled up in this place one after the other, the blood splitting to form little streams. Once Leyland decided to attack this place, the barbarian tribe was completely done for. As Aj had taken most of the strong and the young, all that were left behind were a bunch of frail, elderly, female or children beings. It could be said that in front of these vicious pirates, resistance was pointless. This barbarian tribe seems to hold some secrets. Leyland touched his chin, a devilishly charming smile on his face as he arrived at the heart of the tribe. The sacrifices were made here, but it was to some unknown god. A large piece of obsidian was carved into a firm altar, on which there was a large animal skin flag and strange crimson runes. In front of the altar were a few struggling barbarians, all of them unbelievably old. "You of another race, do not come here," they exclaimed. They were so frail they looked like reeds. A few youths next to them held onto the last spears and weapons they had, trembling as they aimed at the invader with eyes full of fear. A barbarian priest, a sorcerer. Leyland watched these barbarians who already had one foot in the grave and sensed the power of their bloodlines. He could not help but nod to himself. Scram! Arcane spells burst forth, forming terrifying large elemental hands that tore the few sorcerers into shreds. Their stubborn resistance was futile, and such strength instantly left them at a loss. A few arcane fireballs rumbled forth, burning the rest of the barbarians to ashes. Leyland stepped over the corpses to arrive at the altar, nothing in his way. Spirit, soul, or is it without a conscient? As he felt around the coarse notches carved into the stone, Leyland closed his eyes. Are these barbarians trying to gather divinity with the power of their community? With tons of experience, Leyland immediately saw through their plans. The power of faith far exceeded extraordinary force. With years of worship and sacrifice, this place had already begun to develop traces of a primal power. The altar had strong faith within it. There were spirits of powerful beings mixed in, those who had died over time, and the foundation was currently very firm. Just a bit more time could really have given birth to divinity. This was how many ancient tribal gods had been born. A high-ranked barbarian could use this bit of divinity to cross the threshold of becoming legendary. They could even become a demigod with their advance, combining that with their faith to ignite godfire. As he too had plans to become a god, Leyland could comprehend this thought process. As for the person chosen to become a god, it should be Aj, or do they have another powerful pawn? How ambitious. Leyland stroked his chin. There had always been many intelligent people in this world. As the outer seas did not have the attention of too many gods yet, becoming a god in the outer seas was much less difficult than in the continent. For this reason, Aj had set his sights on this area, which coincided with Leyland's plan. Is this a god of the barbarian race? With how weak the outer seas are, a demigod would immediately unify the place, making it a playground for the barbarians. Leyland's eyes glinted. Very creative, but it's a pity that you met me. Leyland had long since treated the outer seas of Dambrath as his territory. While the barbarians had their own plans, he would have to disappoint them. The spirits are valiant, guarding the tremendous power of faith and soul origin tightly. Leyland observed the obsidian carvings and animal skin runes, an unenthusiastic look on his face. Seems like every barbarian that dies will return to this place. This was the hope of a race. In the world of gods, a race without protection from a god would not have a future. Mixed with their hot-bloodedness and sacrifices, it was both inspiring and tragic. Leyland shut his eyes and he felt like these spirits had encircled him. A tremendous malicious intent descended. Scram! Scram! This was no illusion, but the power of rejection from the altar itself. Tusk, tusk. How powerful does the unified heart of an entire race get with blood sacrifices urging it on? Such strength. I wish to defeat it. I shall strike down the ascension of your race and crush your hopes completely. A deep and dark power could instantly be seen in Leyland's eyes. Devour! Leyland willed it, and the altar creaked like it couldn't bear the weight. The ground began to shake as if there was an earthquake, creating numerous dark holes. Heat, lunacy, energy that was filled with soul force surged out from the altar like a tsunami. Leyland's expression was incomparably sinister for an instant, all sorts of emotions flashing in his eyes. The barbarian spirits were extremely crazed and vengeful, launching forth with all sorts of snarls and counterattacks as they began their last struggle. It was a pity that this was a minor issue for Leyland. After all, he was experienced with souls. HSS. The phantom of a Targaryen emerged in Leyland's mind, and in one mouthful devoured the numerous souls and conscience. In the face of Leyland's soul origin, the attack from these valiant souls were as weak as ants. Varied soul force burst forth as they shattered, carrying berserk emotions and numerous memory fragments. A soul is a small matter. The issue is that there's still these berserk emotions within the soul force, Leyland sighed. The basic requirement to absorb divinity was that one was legendary, and this was not without reason. Those who were yet to cross that threshold wouldn't even be able to live through the attacks of these souls. God, I pray that you protect our barbarian race. You must make the barbarians the most powerful race. Please ensure the survival of the barbarians. I want to have meat. I want meat every day. Such chaotic thoughts appeared in Leyland's mind that they could cause a regular person to go mad. Even someone with legendary strength could acquire a mental disorder, the chaotic soul energy causing cracks in their memories. However, Leyland had the AI chip. He also had prior experience in this area, and his own soul origin was near rank 7. He could still take this. HSS. I am the limitless Yermangander, the master that devours all things. The Targaryen phantom appeared in Leyland's pupils, and the power of devouring appeared, forming spirals that devoured all the chaotic soul origins at one go. After being converted, the strength surged into Leyland's sea of consciousness. The AI chip's prompt sounded at this moment. Beep. Host has taken in a large amount of energy, determined to be soul origin essence. Absorbed. Large amounts of icy streams of air converged in Leyland's mind, allowing his spiritual force to revolve rapidly. Beep. Host has absorbed soul energy. Spirit. The accumulations of the barbarian tribe over countless years had made things easy for Leyland, and even allowed him to raise his spiritual force. Leyland looked at his hands and murmured, My spiritual force has increased a bit. I feel like every small increase in stats past 15 points is a huge advance. The AI chip's prompts continued. Beep. Host's spirit has broke through, becoming rank 16 Arcanist. At this moment, his stats were refreshed. Leyland fallen. Age, 22, race, human, rank 16 Arcanist. Strength, 13, agility, 11, vitality, 12, spirit, 16. Arcane energy, 160 status, healthy. Feats, sturdy, erudite, elementary, perfect body. Specialties, arcane energy detection, arcane amplification. Progress on weave analysis. Level 0, 100% level 1. 100% level 2, 100% level 3, 100% level 4, 100% level 5, 67.35% level 6, 41, 91% level 7, 22, 33%. Spell slots available, rank 7 2, rank 6 5, rank 5 7, rank 4, rank 3, rank 2, rank 1. Rank 0. The advancement of Arcanists required growth in both spiritual force and soul force, as well as the comprehension and sensing of arcane energy. However, with Leyland's attainments in magic with his main body, he already surpassed many legendary Arcanists. There was practically no bottleneck for his advance, and his spirit breaking through automatically led to a rise in his rank. The barbarian tribe hasn't formed a divinity yet. Just a bit of the power of faith mixed with soul energy can help me increase a rank. Perhaps I should focus on finding information in this area. In Leyland's eyes, the power of faith was the power of emotion and also soul force. There had been no bottlenecks in his advancement, and all he needed was enormous energy and his ability of devouring. When all the conditions were met, he could quickly advance. For Leyland, this was also a shortcut to more power. As long as there were barbarian worshippers, it was possible that they had formed great soul energy like this, be it in the outer seas or various other areas in the continent. Of course, if an altar had truly gathered divinity, Leyland would not dare devour it. If not, his own temperament could change, and that was not something trivial. Becoming the patron saint of the barbarians would be even worse than killing himself. Mages soared outer seas on board the barbarian's ship. AGH, Aj suddenly dropped to his knees, roaring in pain. Dear, what's the matter? Madame Tillin rushed to his side and helped him up. My family's sacrificial altar. It's gone. The response has been completely cut off. Odge spat out the words through gritted teeth, and the implications in his statement made Tillin pale in response. We haven't caught up to them. After they had received the news, Odge had immediately set off. However, they had to conceal their movements, and the barbarian lands in Fire Scale Island were very far from Pirates' Cove. Originally, this had been done for their own safety, but something like this happening would make it extremely difficult to mount a rescue. We must avenge them. Tillin bit her lips so hard that a trickle of blood spilled out. Since their sacrificial altar had been destroyed, it was obvious what had befallen the members of their tribe. Her heart dropped. It wasn't just one or two barbarians that had fallen. Everyone in the tribe, be it the elderly, the frail, the women, or the children, had perished. The souls of hundreds of years of the tribe's experts, their sacrifices and devotion, had been completely destroyed. Even if she wasn't a barbarian, Tillin could imagine how this sort of aftermath would lead to the barbarians going berserk. Ah. In my name as Odge, the king and leader of the barbarians, I vow to the gods that I'll wrench that damned wizard's skull off. Odge roared, slicing his cheek with his dagger. Boiling dark red blood rolled down from the cut, making his boorish face seem even more malevolent and terrifying. Oh, kill him! Kill him! The barbarians below him all saw red, as their family and children had all been at Fire Scale Island. There was no chance that they had survived. The fox woman Tillin gritted her teeth, but spoke out in the end. Odge, I believe that now isn't the best time to fight him. He must have prepared a trap for us. After the words left her mouth, she could no longer continue speaking. This was because she saw the expression in Odge's eyes, that look of undying, frightening hatred. After what had happened, forget a trap, Odge would traverse hell and high water without the slightest hesitation. At this moment, even if she had come to advise on the situation, her persuasion would not have the slightest effect. Is this part of his plan, using the power of hatred to lead these barbarians into a trap? At this moment, Madame Tillin suddenly felt a deep chill in her heart, caused by that noble wizard. Fire Scale Island was within their sights. Dense black smoke continued to pour into the horizon, and the entire island seemed to have descended into hell. Seeing their tribe's land wrapped in a great fire, the barbarians all descended into frantic roaring. Find them! Tear them apart! Odge tightly gripped Madame Tillin's shoulder. Rivulets of blood appeared on her skin. I will, Madame Tillin vowed. After saying this, however, she realized that she did not need to use tracing spells. This was because several ships from the Scarlet Tigers appeared in her line of sight, and they seemed to have not left in time. Tens of small barbarian corpses were hung from the mast as bait. Roar. After seeing those corpses, the barbarians collectively went berserk. Odge brandished his enormous saber, and the other sailors rowed with all their might. There was only one wish in the barbarians' hearts: to find those damned robbers and get their revenge. The barbarians were the only ones allowed to bring death and suffering to other races in these regions of the outer seas. Now, they were suffering the fate that they handed down to others. Madame Tillin's heart suddenly grew sorrowful, and a single tear rolled down her face. She could already see the shadow of her own death, and could not escape from it. MMMMMMM. The deep sound of a bugle horn could be heard, bringing to one's mind the coming siege. The Scarlet Tigers, elite troops, emerged and completely surrounded all of the barbarians' ships. They were like an enormous pocket wrapping around its goods. In their fury, these simple-minded barbarians did not sense the danger before them at all, and immediately took the bait. Kill! The boss is giving 5 gold coins for every barbarian's head, Ronald loudly ordered, and the reward was spread widely through the use of signal flags. Boom, boom, the goblin cannons boomed without end, and near them were the sounds of dwarven artillery firing volleys of gunfire. Under Leyland's command, the Scarlet Tigers had slowly come up with their own style of combat. Roar. Roar, row after row of barbarians collapsed in a flicker of flames. Even their tough skin could not withstand the combined power of gunpowder and magic. Odge grew even more berserk at this presentation. After the long-range battle had ended, it was time for the traditional methods of jumping and boarding ships. Odge immediately ignored the charge of a pirate towards him, lifting the fellow up by his head. KRRCH, KRRCH. The human pirate's complexion twisted, and rivulets of blood flowed down from his forehead. Crazed roars sounded as this unfortunate pirate's skill burst like a watermelon in Aj's palm. CHHH. Blazing hot white light flashed past, and the surrounding pirates were directly slashed into two halves by the saber's chi. As the strongest in the barbarian tribe, Aj was a high-ranked warrior. His barbarian bloodline and the support of magic items allowed very few below the realm of legendaries to rival him. It was a pity that all of this was as negligible as a grain of sand in the face of the Scarlet Tigers. A scarlet-red figure suddenly flew from the opposing ship, letting out a powerful, clear cry in midair. Roar. A domain of intimidating draconic power extended from the ship. This oppressive power stemming from a bloodline made Madame Tillin take a few steps back in fright. After she saw a winged half-dragon creature swoop down at great speed, a long sword burning with raging flames intercepting Aj's saber. An enormous crack appeared on his blade. A human demi-dragon? No, it's a dragon's disciple. This power. Madame Tillin dumbly looked on at Isabel, who was covered in red scales, with a despondent expression on her face. Is this the bloodline of a legendary dragon? But how is this possible? Wasn't she corrupted by demons? Madame Tillin did not know what power a successor of a legendary dragon's bloodline could wield, but now it was made clear to her. The Scarlet Witch? Aj looked at the crack on his enchanted saber with a pained expression on his face. This was the weapon he used most after all, and it had helped him cut off the heads of many troublesome enemies. Now, however, a crack had appeared on the enchanted saber after just one clash with the witch. A legendary item. Aj looked at the blazing red longsword in Isabel's grasp with an increasingly ugly expression. He sensed an unknown danger coming from that weapon. Don't let her weapon touch you, and be careful of her dragon breath attack. I'll help you. Madame Tillin's expression was very anxious, and she readied several amplification spells in her hand and was about to cast them. I am your opponent. We meet again, beautiful lady. Rumble. The raging flames of a fireball engulfed them, blocking Madame Tillin's way. The entire area was thrown into chaos, with barbarians and pirates fighting wildly. One of the barbarians fell on occasion, and their head would be chopped off immediately. Blood stained the ground, but even in this hellish scene, Leyland had nary a speck of dust on him. He even greeted Madame Tillin in a refined and courteous manner, as if he was the most respectable noble. Leyland fallen! Madame Tillin called out the wizard's name through gritted teeth, her eyes slowly filling with fear. That man's grasp of human nature was even more terrifying than the devil's. It had not been long since she had seen a true devil in Neville, but the feeling that he gave her was not as evil and as profound as what she felt in Leyland's presence. It has been 4 or 5 years since we last met, hasn't it? Madame is still as beautiful as before. A sincere smile broke out on the noble baron's face, and Tillin felt that if she gave him her hand, he would have kissed it in greeting without the slightest hesitation. However, the eyes of the wizard who stood across from her were ice cold, and he looked at her with a face utterly devoid of emotion. I apologize, my beautiful lady. I don't have much time left, so can I ask you to hurry up and die for me? In a single second, the light and breezy conversation turned dangerous. Wind howled, and Leyland smiled slightly as powerful magic converged. An earth-shattering attack was cast resolutely, ignoring all the beauty that Madame Tillin possessed and indifferently sending her to her death. This sorrowful feeling made Madame Tillin's heart feel depressed. Her feelings lasted only for a moment, though, and afterwards she no longer had the capacity to reflect on it. Berserk energy particles converged into a splendidly brilliant longsword. The sword point had a spiritual quality to it, and it was directly thrust at Tillin. A strong wind seemed to directly slice at the skin on her face. Mage's sword, a rank 7 spell. You're already a high-ranked wizard. Trickles of blood dripped down, but Madame Tillin's face was still filled with incredulity. She finally knew how she had lost. A high-ranked wizard could completely crush the barbarians here. But he's only a little older than 21 years old. With this power, he must be a genius that even the gods will envy. Madame Tillin was unable to think any more after this. The sharp mage's sword pierced through the layers of her defense, directly running through the fox woman's bosom. Even though she had been a sorcerer and the chief wizard of the barbarians, Tillin's attainments in magic were only on par with Ernest. She had only achieved that through her bloodline power. She was simply unable to endure a single blow from Leyland. At this moment, the victor of another battle had been decided as well. Seeing that the fight would drag on, Isabel had cast Dragon's Breath without hesitation. Her flaming scales formed a dazzling armor that seemed like a bunch of fresh flowers, making her look like a Valkyrie. As a dragon warlock, she inherited the spellcasting abilities of a red dragon. On top of that, the bloodline Isabel possessed was that of a legendary dragon, boosting her power greatly. The frantic flames consumed Odge in a flash, his barbaric toughness and determination unable to stop his painful wails. Schlick! Isabel had activated the red dragon sword immediately as well, and light flashed as Odge's powerful enchanted saber was broken apart. Its obstacle removed, the red dragon sword pierced into Odge's heart without any reluctance. Flames blazed, immediately destroying all the vital organs in his body. AAH. Odge lowered his head with great difficulty, looking at the scorched black flesh on his chest. The light in his eyes slowly dimmed. No! Madame Tillin let out a mournful wail. She managed to summon strength from some unknown well of energy, struggling to crawl next to Odge's body. My beloved. She held Odge's huge, lifeless hand, her eyes filled with contentment as if she had grabbed hold of the most precious thing in the entire world. They slowly closed. Looking upon them, Leyland and Isabel did not try and hinder them in any way. They quietly watched this pair of eternal soulmates pass into the afterworld. Such a sad and beautiful romance. No, Isabel rolled her eyes after hearing Leyland's idle comment. It's rather unlike you to say that sort of thing. Also, why are you this impatient? She looked all around them. The barbarians had been forced into a weak position. With Odge and Tillin slain, the remaining barbarians had grown even more frantic. However, it ultimately ended with them struggling in the throes of death. Once the final few barbarian shamans died, the entire crew's destruction grew inevitable. They crumbled under such heavy suppression, jumping into the sea one after the other to flee. Yet, Robin Hood had long anticipated this retreat. They were shot dead. This was the problem with naval warfare. Once a side lost, it was difficult to flee. Only absolute victories and losses were possible on the sea, and losing made it very difficult to free oneself. Leyland had always been lucky. Rather, he'd always planned very well. His current pace and lack of hesitation conflicted with Isabel's view of him, especially the use of their own people as bait. His methods stank of short-sighted vision. You could tell. Then there is no harm in you guessing what guards I've prepared in advance. Seeing his cousin maturing, Leyland's heart was rather gratified. She could be considered his greatest helping hand in the outer seas. It can't be. The priest and thief from last time. Isabel only needed to think about it for a moment before her eyes flashed in understanding. Leyland nodded, waving his hand carelessly. A translucent wave rose with a small water screen floating atop it. Although there was no indication of their identity, the sailors on board radiated a uniquely murderous aura. Are these pirates, ones which were groomed by the god of murder? They've always been hiding in Pirates' Cove. I never thought. Isabel breathed in sharply. She'd always believed that the Scarlet Tigers and barbarians were the biggest crews in the outer seas, neglecting the fragmented small groups. However, these small groups were in fact the biggest strength of Pirates' Cove, forming the majority of ships in the Pirates' Tide. Even a small part of those in service could assemble into a power force to reckon with. Thankfully, you've already discovered them. If we fought a battle of attrition with the barbarians, these locusts would have descended on the place. The consequences would have been unbearable, Isabel said, with a grave expression on her face. She now no longer had the slightest doubt in her mind that the Church of Murder were not just ordinary fishermen. You're absolutely correct, Leyland agreed with Isabel's point. This is also why I avoided a fight at Pirates' Cove. Of course I didn't want the barbarians to enjoy a locational advantage, but I also wanted to avoid these maggots in the dark. The corners of Leyland's lips quirked up into a sneer. However, now we've discovered their plan and made preparations after destroying the barbarians. What have we got to worry about? What do you mean? Isabel asked hesitantly. Standing by Leyland, she smelt that special scent of bloodthirst. Let's welcome them and kill them all. Leyland's eyes flashed as he made up his mind. Now is the best time. The entire Church of Murder in the outer seas has assembled here. Their death will be a great blow to it. A blow. Isabel had never thought Leyland's ambition would grow to the point that he'd wish to strike down a true God's church. How am I to spread my own religion without getting rid of them? Leyland smiled coldly to himself. There is a dead calm here in the outer seas, and Sirik is the dark world's greatest god. Once he is cut off from his lackeys in the prime material plane, all the faith in the outer seas will be mine for the taking. In reality, this wasn't a question of benefits. Leyland had long since taken a fancy to the outer seas and determined it to be his base. He prepared to establish it as the foundation of his religion, so he would clash with the existing religions here. First was Sirik. He was the biggest influence in the outer seas and had quite a few pirates as his followers. On top of that, this was an evil god and a public fight wouldn't be an issue. On the contrary, it would perhaps earn him the favor of good gods. In the future, Leyland would likely sweep across the outer seas, eliminating all the native religions and evil gods in one fell swoop. Don't worry, cousin. The god of murder's influence isn't that strong in the outer seas, and he is suppressed by many other good gods. Additionally, even the Thieves' Guild is not entirely under his control. Leyland had acquired a lot of inside information on the three great guilds after traveling the continent. Sirik could only be considered a shareholder in the Thieves' Guild, not their head. There were many other gods supporting the organization from the shadows. The Warriors' Guild was the same, and a single god wouldn't be allowed to monopolize these channels. Even the narrow-minded wizards weren't purely loyal to Mistra. Agma, among others, had his share of worshippers. This meant a war against Sirik did not equate to an attack on the Thieves' Guild. So it's like that. But still, he's a powerful true god. Isabel's eyes were full of anxiety. Needless to say, even weak gods wouldn't relinquish their own territories, let alone allow their followers to suffer a big loss. Even if Sirik's influence in the outer seas was very weak, he wielded great power on the continent. He controlled many high-ranked military powers from the shadow. It was entirely possible to dispatch one or two legendaries to fight for him. This was the ultimate decisive force in the prime material plane, and once such a high-ranked expert arrived, Isabel was well aware that nobody on her side could offer even the least bit of resistance. Ordinary people couldn't touch the legendary realm. Even the fallen family's entire wealth was nothing in one's eyes. Even if a legendary comes to hurt my family, they'll have to step over my dead body first. Isabel declared firmly, tightly grasping her red dragon longsword. Leyland was naturally aware of the resolution in her eyes, but did not speak of his intended plans. Sirik could possibly be fly into a rage and send legendaries over from the continent. However, this required time. By then, Leyland himself would likely have advanced. In addition, one's development necessitated the blundering of others' benefits. This would naturally lead to conflict. Choosing the outer seas was Leyland making a quite tame decision. Had he begun developing on the mainland, legendary experts would probably have been sent to take him down already. Ultimately, it's all a question of strength. If I have enough strength, what can the Church of Murder do even if I slay their members and take over the outer seas? Sirik and Malor were both chaotic evil gods, held in poor regard by the general public. Leyland could use any means he wanted to deal with them. Choosing the right faction is of the utmost importance. Since the good faction is out of the question, I must not lose the lawful faction. Leyland stroked his chin as he pondered the situation meaninglessly. Just as Leyland and Isabel were about to speak, Ronald finished his mission. He bounded over to them in his excitement. There were still traces of barbarian blood on him as he began his report. My lord, the barbarians have been destroyed. Only 5 ships have been sunk, and the rest are now under our control. Prepare to launch the second phase of the plan. Take the heavily damaged ships away and prepare to fight again. Leyland's orders were light. We still have enemies left. Ronald had believed that the Scarlet Tigers would be the strongest crew in the outer seas once the barbarians were gone. Assassin, as long as we reign over the outer seas, there will be no lack of challengers. Leyland smiled. This time, it's only a few little mice who overestimate themselves. Ronald, how do you think we should deal with them? Of course we cut off their heads and claws, storing them in oil bottles. No mercy, Ronald answered with a murderous spirit. The law of the pirates dictated one sentence for those who dared challenge one's status and loot: death. The shadows of sails danced about as numerous sailors and pirates yelled in their attempts to control them. The ships were being rowed in a bid to have them sail more quickly. A bishop was frowning on the largest ship, having a bad feeling about the situation. Speed this up, Rogers. We need to hurry there as soon as possible. I understand, Master, a pirate captain next to the bishop answered respectfully, but this is the fastest we can go. Is that so? Then why is it that the Scarlet Tiger and the Barbarians' tsunami can go faster than 18 knots? The bishop frowned. They're large pirate groups. Their main battleships have been enchanted. Rogers didn't dare speak his thoughts. He hesitated for a while, answering as if put in a spot. Those are individual abilities, and they have nothing to do with the speed of the fleet. No, no. You're all trying to deceive the mighty god of murder and his priests. The bishop watched Rogers, facial muscles contorting to become incomparably sinister. No, that's not it. Master, my loyalty to our god. No, please forgive me, please forgive me. The captain had seen the ruthless methods of the bishop. Horror immediately dawned on his face, and he knelt down. This accusation was not something trivial. The bishop had grown bloodthirsty and insane recently, occasionally killing people for small matters. Rogers began to regret responding to the call. Pooh. However, even as he begged for forgiveness, a black dagger slashed through his throat. His windpipe was cut apart, and large amounts of blood spurted out. Rogers' eyes rolled back, his hands grasping at his throat tightly. Blood unceasingly flowed from between his fingers, causing guttural groans from his throat. The struggles of the dying man ended quickly. The pirates around the place froze, beginning to wish they could hide their heads in their chests. Their captain, who'd been lively and frisky all this while, had been turned into a corpse in an instant. The bishop glanced at the first mate. Dispose of him and increase our speed. Any questions? The first mate had been scared stupid, but once he saw the chill in the bishop's eyes, he immediately sobered up. No, none at all. I guarantee you, my lord, there's no issue at all, he shouted. Then go, or you'll share the same fate. The bishop waved his arms, no longer caring about those pirates who were doing everything in their capabilities. Gazing into the distance, he had a profound look in his eyes. Damn it, that darned little noble. I shouldn't have let him off during the pirates' tide. The bishop's plan had been perfect, where he would provoke both sides and help the weaker one. Once the Scarlet Tigers and barbarian pirates weakened, his team would gobble up these two organizations and become the kings of the outer sea. He even had plans to unify the dark world and make the outer seas independent, constructing a divine kingdom in these seas. However, all of this had been wrecked by the darned noble. Veins began to show in the bishop's eyes. He'd never thought that the noble would be so gutsy as to kill the emissary he had dispatched. Such a fearless and disrespectful being. He must be executed immediately, and his soul nailed to the wall of the faithless as he howls in anguish. As a religious person, the bishop immediately loathed Leyland with all his heart. A person who held no respect for the gods could never become a lamb of his master. If Leyland could not be subdued in terms of his mind, then he would have to destroy his body. This was how power had worked since ancient times. Still, the bishop had no idea that the gods were also just as fearless when young. They shared the same belief as all the heroes whose names remained in historical records. Without success, they may as well just roll off a cliff and join the corroding soil beneath. Although he did not know of this concept, the bishop was determined to draw blood. He wanted to eliminate this being as soon as possible. There's still time. The barbarians must have just fought them. Even if my plans are slightly affected, the barbarians' strength should be enough to cause immense damage to the other side. When the time comes, the bishop was immersed in his fantasies. Suddenly, he gaped at a massive number of sails on the horizon. The bloody skull and dagger of the Scarlet Tigers took the lead, causing all the pirates to grow restless. Gods, the Scarlet Tigers were the finest pirate organization in the outer seas. They had heard of their rise to fame and power, and it was impossible not to feel stress when confronting them. Rumble, the Scarlet Tigers unhesitatingly opened fire. The many ships were like table knives cutting into butter as they split the fleet apart. The lowest pirates depended on elite troops and morale. In contrast, the Scarlet Tigers wished to leave their opponents far behind. They possessed an unequaled confidence in themselves, gained from cutting off the heads of countless enemies. Do you see it now? Leyland handed the command to Ronald and Robin Hood. After all, his specialty was spellcasting. With how long he'd been away, he was unfamiliar with his crew. Those looking to improve themselves knew their flaws and did their best to make up for them. If he was not suited to some roles, Leyland would choose people to control who were better at them. Someone who wanted to do everything well would only tire themselves to death. Seems like Robin Hood and Ronald are doing very well, Leyland said to Isabel, who was next to him, laughing out. They're people you nurtured. Are you trying to brag about your extraordinary foresight? Isabel was actually very astonished. Leyland seemed to have a pair of special eyes, and he would never go wrong when it came to judging people. Still, her reply had been in a huff as she didn't want her cousin to grow too cocky. "No, Just as Leyland was preparing to answer, his expression suddenly changed and he abruptly pushed Isabel aside. A translucent figure arrived before him, as if traversing through space. This was Shadow Jump. It was a powerful ability belonging to high-ranked assassins, a technique that could only be comprehended by those nearing the legendary realm. It allowed one to use the shadow dimension to shift locations, attacking enemies instantly. This ability was basically everyone's nightmare. Leyland was a wizard now in close quarters combat with an ambushing assassin. The result was obvious. The high-ranked assassin didn't reveal any excess movements. Not even the elation of completing his mission entered his eyes, only a look of apathy and deadness on his face. A powerful black dagger, laced with curses, pierced through Leyland's defenses and entered his heart. "No!" Isabel immediately turned crazy, entering her half-dragon form as she pounced over towards them. Only when his weapon hit flesh and scalding blood burst out did a glimmer arise in the eyes of the assassin. A burst of strength exploded from his right hand as he planned to draw the dagger and leave. After all, an assassin couldn't take a high-ranked swordsman head-on. He had assassinated the leader of the opposing side, and that was enough. Much to his surprise, the assassin couldn't take the dagger out. He froze in place, stunned to see fleshy sprouts appearing in this Leyland's chest. They were like plant vines, bundling the dagger up tightly. That dazed moment left the assassin with no avenue for escape. Leyland's chest exploded as numerous bloody tendrils burst towards him, binding him tightly. They were already trying to pierce through his skin like suckers, absorbing fresh blood. "Necromancy? No." A shocked, coarse voice sounded from under the assassin's veil. "That's just a flesh puppet, a spell I made just for you." A portal opened to reveal the real Leyland. "You should be the same high-ranked assassin that assassinated numerous bishops during the Pirates' Tide, no? This is a rather great gift." "So you've already become a high-ranked wizard." The assassin's eyes did not fluctuate at all, and he allowed the vines to control his body. It seemed that he had lost all will to escape. "Stop pretending. I can see all your methods." Leyland spoke coldly, and numerous spells shot out. With dimensional anchor locking onto the assassin, even the shadow plane had been sealed. "Damn it! You!" With his trump card seen through, the assassin was no longer as relaxed. Leyland then killed him with a finger of death. "Bastard, do you know how worried I was for you? At least discuss it with me beforehand." "Pendant, I'm sorry, dear cousin. At this point, it's better to get things done before we discuss things." Leyland waved his arm, and another teleportation door opened. Isabel stepped out of the teleportation door and immediately heard the uproar from the surroundings, as well as enraged shouts. Without any excess movements, she activated her bloodline abilities and the hidden techniques of the Red Dragon Sword Dragon Aura domain. Fireball. The legendary dragon's spiritual domain and blazing fire rumbled, causing all the pirates to cry out miserably as they were sent flying. There were traces of charring all over their bodies. The other pirates in the distance were also shrieking as they lay immobile on the ground. There was no way out for the weak in the face of the spiritual domain of Dragon Aura, and they would only be massacred by their enemies. In actuality, the dragon aura of a regular dragon was still just average. One from an ancient or primordial dragon could take out even most high-ranked professionals and even affect legendaries to a great degree. Teleportation doors, high-ranked wizards, and a dragon sorcerer. The god of murder's bishop cried out in alarm, light shining around his body. After seeing Leyland step out of the teleportation door as well, his pupils shrank. "It's you! You've already advanced to become a high-rank wizard. Cut the bullshit." Leyland gave the bishop a disdainful glance, the arcane spell he'd already prepared launching forth. Mage's disjunction. Boom, boom, crackle, numerous spell rays shattered, returning to form the original magic item. They returned to the ring in the bishop's hand, then his necklace, followed by his luxurious clothing. One after another, magic items exploded on the bishop's body. As he had too many on him, he was unlucky enough but to have to flee naked. A rank 9 disjunction. A high-ranked wizard above rank 19. Uncaring of his own image, the bishop sunk into shock. In a few years, the opponent had become a high-ranked wizard, which shocked him to no end. On top of that, he was already a rank 19, very close to becoming legendary. However, the power of Mage's disjunction had been shown right in front of him, which was something he could not understand at all. This is the might of arcane spells. Seeing the bishop, who was now completely in the nude, Leyland sighed inside. He was a high-ranked priest who was at least rank 17, and his wizard ranking would not be enough to subdue the priest. The opponent possessed a large number of powerful magic items. However, being an arcanist allowed him to bypass the limitations of spell slots and the weave. As long as he had enough arcane energy and the correct spell models, any spell under the legendary realm could be cast for a price. This rank 9 Mage's Disjunction, for example, was a spell used specifically to deal with magic professionals. Its focus was very powerful, and all items below legendary would be undone under this spell. It could be said that arcane spells were the bane of all wizards. Most of the battle might of wizards depended on their magic items, and being stripped of them would be a deadly blow. On top of that, the heartache of having the magic items formed with blood and tears, made of materials and resources that had been gathered painstakingly, was enough for wizards to cough up blood. A prime example of this would be the bishop now. With his wealth and the numerous spells and items to aid his escape, Leyland's surprise attack alone was not enough to kill the opponent. Now, however, all of the preparations he had made had been unraveled under Leyland's spell, completely losing their effects. Most high-ranked priests' divine spells were for buffs and healing. There were few that were meant for killing. Leyland's spell had taken out most of the bishop's strength. Damn it! How did you advance so quickly? The bishop's face was almost green, eyes now bloodshot. No matter how much he had overestimated Leyland's strength, he would never have imagined that Leyland was extremely close to becoming legendary. It was this huge oversight that led to his failure. This is just the effect of a mage's disjunction spell. If it's the legendary version, that would be the nightmare of all legendary wizards. Not only legendary items, even divine weapons could be damaged. Leyland's eyes showed his thirst and intoxication. He then landed his gaze on the bishop. "Wah, what do you want?" The bishop still held no fear for Leyland. There was only immense regret that he had not prepared more. "What I want? That's what I should be asking you, my dear bishop." Leyland answered with a slight smile. At this moment, Isabel had abruptly sent out a few dragon's breaths and burnt a few high-ranked assassins to ashes. Upon seeing this, the corner of the bishop's eyes began to twitch. These high-ranked assassins had been great helpers that he had nurtured with care. While their power was lacking in comparison to the one that had attacked Leyland, they were all elites. Now, however, their corpses lined the area, destroying all of the bishop's hard work over the years. The defenses of a dragon Warlock's scales were exceedingly terrifying. On top of that, she had a legendary item in the red dragon sword. These assassins, high-ranked enchanted daggers, were no match at all, and once they crossed swords, their lives were easily ended. Meanwhile, the battle between the Scarlet Tigers and the bishop's pirates began to show who was on the winning side. The high-ranked pirates that had been hastily gathered were no match for Leyland's elites that had gone through countless battles. The sounds of yells closed in, and even the warship that was the main force was caught up to and surrounded by the pirate ships. Numerous fleeing pirates surged out like the tide. Leyland seemed unruffled in the situation, a confidence inherent to his very being. "Bishop, I haven't dealt with your church before, but you show malicious intent against us. Care to explain?" Leyland watched him, the glint from the AI chip strengthening. This bishop gave him a very different feeling from many priests. He'd seen his fair share, like the gold priest Xena, who was in charge of the Church of Wealth on Fallen Island. The bishop wasn't like that. Beep. An abnormal energy reaction has been detected within the host's body. The AI chip performed a full-body scan in front of Leyland's eyes. Many dark red spots had appeared on the translucent model, making it look demonic. As expected. Is this the contamination from abnormal energy? Leyland wondered inside. It's a high-ranked priest, so this contamination should come from divine force. In Leyland's eyes, the holy light of a high-ranked bishop had now been contaminated so badly that it was beyond recognition. No matter what kind of god, divine force was better when it was pure. However, what Leyland saw was divine force that had been contaminated and warped. Has the god of murder really gone mad? He doesn't even care about his priests. Also, this power of distortion. Leyland felt a chill in his heart. Legends said that Sirik, the greater god of murder, had begun to go insane. He was even planning to transform into a demon. His divine kingdom had signs of falling into the abyss, and it looked to be a possibility now. The only being able to influence him that greatly would be distorted shadow. As expected of an ancient peak rank 8 Magus, even after falling, he can still cause his opponents so much trouble. Leyland could not help but sigh inside. The bishop's eyes raised slightly. In this situation, Leyland's words sounded like he was amenable to persuasion. This, I can explain. The bishop immediately gave Leyland a reason. Backing him was a true god and a greater god at that. It was understandable that Leyland feared him. In the prime material plane, there had never been anyone with the guts to go against a greater god. This was his belief in his god. The plan to use military force has completely failed, but it won't be bad if I can pull him to my side and make him a follower. Traces of dark red light flashed in the bishop's eyes. He could not help but unclench his fingers from around a pendant he'd been clutching tightly. Now, Leyland's eyes flickered, and an invisible spatial undulation flashed with a bright light. The bishop was stunned and immediately felt a sharp pain in his wrist. Pack. His right hand fell to the ground, bright red blood seeping out. A miniature statue of a god fell down. He had no plans of complying. The bishop's eyes went wide, and insanity flashed within. The only hand he had left began to grab towards Leyland's heart. It's too late, finger of death, Leyland sighed. The dark rays from his hand disappeared into the bishop's forehead, causing the light in his eyes to dim. Thud. The bishop's corpse fell heavily to the ground, causing the pirates to break down. The rest of the matter was naturally left to his underlings. Leyland stood beside the bishop's fallen right hand and saw the small pendant, looking deep in thought. God descent? The material is strange, and it's even immune to the mage's disjunction attack. With this thought, Leyland picked the pendant up. It was rather small. It was a miniature statue of a god, with thin silver chains threaded through it glimmering brightly. Greed buzz. The statue of the god began to rumble, divine force rippling like waves in water. It was as if it was about to come alive. However, with the external activation not coming forth, the pendant restlessly shook a few times and then unwillingly stilled, losing its sheen. The divine summoning failed, Apart from the divine force here, there is also the presence of the divine kingdom's coordinates and even the conscient of a god, Leyland muttered. At this moment, he felt an extremely bitter conscient radiating great power from the pendant, as if its rage was about to overflow. I'd need to worry if this was the true body, even if it's an avatar. But what's a trifling conscient like this? Leyland harumphed, and a Targaryen phantom appeared in his eyes. HSS! The conscient of a near rank 7 descended, annihilating all signs of the conscient lingering in the pendant. Just before that conscient dissipated, the raging divine force calmed down like a wave in a tranquil sea. Not bad at all. The divine force contained in here could perhaps give me an unexpected surprise. An expression of glee spread across Leyland's face. The divine force of gods, to put it bluntly, was just a high-ranked power in a different form. It was considered venomous to others, and clerics could only receive the divine force of the gods they worshipped. However, it was all a supplement for Leyland. What a pity! If not for those powerful gods, I would have long since broken into many churches and robbed them of their divine force. Leyland began his deductions. Divine force, divinity, godfare, worshippers, divine spark. These were what the gods needed the most in increasing order. With his current strength, he could barely absorb some divinity, but it would destroy the foundations of his own cultivation. Needless to say, godfire or divine sparks were even more destructive for his body. As for divine force, that was still well within Leyland's absorption capabilities. Moreover, Leyland had deliberately digested the divine force of certain gods. Until now, he had only managed to have chance encounters with Malor and Cyric. These two crazy and sinisterly evil gods had overlapping domains, which laid out a foundation for Leyland's future plans. Looking at the divine force stored in this pendant, it should be enough to increase my spirit a little, or even balance the other aspects of my stats. Leyland rubbed his chin. After eradicating the original conscient in the pendant, the divine force was now ownerless. Leyland could now absorb it slowly, with the greatest efficiency. Through digesting this divine force, Leyland would be able to analyze the process, helping him understand Cyric's divinity. If he met other gods of different domains, he would be able to create a whole new divinity all for himself. After tossing away this thing, Even if this bishop managed to survive, he wouldn't have a happy ending. No, he would be even worse off after his death. Leyland looked at the corpse on the floor and sighed. Gods held control over the souls of their worshippers, and this was a high-ranking priest on top. Leyland hadn't completely destroyed his soul just now. Once it was inspected by the god of death, this priest's soul would definitely be sent to Syric's divine kingdom. As for what punishments the cleric would receive, no more words had to be said. What a pitiful fellow. Leyland was, of course, not sympathetic in the slightest bit. He quickly tossed this matter to the back of his mind. It seems like they were small crews roped in from Pirates' Cove. Apart from the elites of the churches, there aren't many forces could execute something like this. Isabel trod on the face of a pirate captain, using their robes to wipe clean the red dragon sword as she grumbled. With the activation of the bloodline, she'd also inherited a warrior-like thirst for war. Yes, had they been given time to train, we would have had a much bigger problem. Leyland nodded his head in approval, very soon ordering Ronald to clean up the mess. As dusk approached, the sky above the sea was dyed a crimson red. The entire region was littered with the remnants of broken ships and boats. Splintered masts and flags covered half the place, and not too far from that scene were many floating corpses, blood continuing to ooze and trickle from their bloated bodies. The enormous pirate crew slowly left, leaving a trail of destruction behind them. From this day onwards, everyone would know that 2 epic battles were fought in this forsaken region, devastating and annihilating 2 giants of the seas in one stroke. This atmosphere and scenery, I really want to lift my voice in song. Crash, rumble. A figure wearing lavish noble robes descended from the sky. He exuded an aura of charisma and elegance, yet a pair of black wings spread from his back. Apart from the difference in color, this figure looked just like an angel with many beautiful features. However, his image was shattered the moment anyone looked into his eyes. That Baron Leyland. He rules the outer seas from today, eh? I really am looking forward to it. This person was obviously Neville, but his pupils had now turned a silvery hue, with no traces of affection in them. With just one glance into his eyes, one would feel their soul turning frigid. Neville's black wings shook slightly as they supported his weight. At this moment, this demon looked at the Scarlet Tiger ship sailing away as he pondered deep in his thoughts. Strong, determined, decisive, brave. Once a soul with these qualities falls, the strength that would manifest would definitely be able to give birth to a greater devil. As expected, it's a devil, huh? An indifferent voice sounded behind him, which made Neville freeze in his motions. He turned his head around slowly, looking at the young noble wizard that should have left. Yet he was now floating in the air alongside him with his arms crossed, a hint of mockery flickering in his eyes. Hello, mighty wizard, ruler of the outer seas. I am Neville, of the Third Hell. I hereby extend my greetings to you with utmost respect. After giving Leyland a once-over, Neville greeted Leyland decorously, with his right hand on his chest. I believe that in the future there will be a day where you'll require my services. One cannot trust a deal with devils, not to mention that you tried to lure me into a ploy. Anyone who tries to challenge me will never live past the day. Leyland uttered his words icily, and a silver spell formation wrapped Neville up. Wait, I can still give you many things that you would not think of. Material possessions of the prime material world, authority that cannot be challenged, and also many beauties. The silver spell formation seemed to be able to suppress devils. As his black feathers came into contact with the light barrier, they burnt up to release a charred smell. The promise of a devil, ha ha ha. Leyland smiled faintly, his golden pupils turning a deep hue that was darker than the abyss. The phantom of a Targaryen appeared behind him. A terrifying devouring energy burst forth from the spell formation, completely engulfing Neville within. This devouring power, as well as laws. You are. Neville's eyes flashed with understanding, but before he could utter the truth, his body vanished into the spell formation. The ruler of the 3rd level of hell, the Duke of Greed. Mammon, huh? Leyland uttered his breath and closed his eyes, relishing in the energy that he was absorbing. Beep. Host absorbed a large amount of energy. Agility +1, vitality +1. The AI chip voice intoned. Very soon, another notification appeared, and it caused Leyland to become gleeful. Host has devoured a devil from the 3rd hell. Laws of devouring have been activated. Obtained information on laws of greed. Isn't this the devouring technique of my main body? Leyland muttered. His main body controlled the laws of gluttony, and through constantly devouring these laws, he would gain a higher enlightenment of them. The devil from the third hell had enlightened him a little in that aspect. My main body's injuries have begun to heal faster than normal then. Its support has increased. Leyland was elated. His stats had now changed. Leyland Fallen, age 22. Race, human, rank 16 Arcanist. Strength, 13. Agility, 12. Vitality, 13. Spirit, 16. Arcane energy, 160. Status, healthy. Feats, sturdy, erudite, elementary, perfect body. Specialties, arcane energy detection, arcane amplification. I have also absorbed some information on the laws of greed. It seems like Beelzebub was indeed one of the Dukes of Hell. Even after making changes to it, it is still highly adaptable to the laws from the abyss. Leyland gazed towards the horizon. The outer seas are now my base, impenetrable to outside forces. Be it from hell or any divine kingdom, no threat. A high-level flight spell lit up, and very soon Leyland's figure was just a black dot in the distance, slowly disappearing into the horizon. More repercussions were brewing and intensifying in the aftermath of this event. In another part of the continent, in the midst of a gloomy valley, an aura of death permeated the air, and there was a black church at the valley's center. Magical light filled the area, and even legendaries would perish within it. Just as the bishop was about to perish, a white-browed priest raised his head in the church. "Men, your holiness!" Several dark-robed priests answered immediately with reverence in their eyes. Standing in front of them was a core member of the Church of Sirik, a legendary priest. Divine Force, Gisfano, that piece of trash. Not only did he die, he also lost the Master S token. The old man's voice was incredibly hoarse, and it held an unendurably strange tone as he pointed out an earth-shattering fact. "What? That happened at the Dambrath Outer Seas." These black-robed priests exchanged glances, seeing shock in all of their eyes. They were unwilling to think about what had happened to Gisfano. In the Underdark, the druid elves that angered the spider Empress Lolt would turn into terrifying half-spider monsters. For Gisfano, whose soul was in the hands of his god, he would be in a worse state. Even the black-robed priests felt sorrowful on his behalf, but it didn't last for long. The old man slowly scanned them, the whites of his eyes brightening slightly. Gisfano was already a high-ranked priest. We'll have to dispatch a legendary to be able to find out what happened. Who's free right now? One of the priests muttered to himself, then continued. Lord Shadow Mask's whereabouts are unknown now, while Crimson Eye is at the Barren West. It'll be very inconvenient for them. As for my own subordinates, the north is still rather unstable. A few lords have been pursuing Queen Illustrial, and there still haven't been any results. Another black-robed priest reported. This was the pain of large organizations. While their influence was spread throughout the prime material plane, it was not so simple to make use of their high-tier forces. How's the cadaver collector doing? Since the old man had ordered this, he must have his own plans. The last one hesitated for a while before speaking. He has yet to complete his experiments. Tell him to rush to the outer seas once he's done. I want him to skin the scalp of the sinner who had the gall to kill my master's priest. The elderly man spoke slowly, and then knelt in front of the idol and began to pray, immovable. He was like the most solid statue himself. The black-robed priests glanced at each other and retreated. Leyland was completely clueless about the matters on the mainland, but he had his own predictions. He had returned to Port Venus undisturbed and hid in his wizard tower. This serenity should be maintained for a period of time. Even if the god of murder's church wants to take revenge, the time taken for them to investigate and dispatch men should be enough for me to advance. Leyland was now seated in the core of the wizard tower. There were terrifying isolation runes on the walls around him, and the tower genie was strictly monitoring everything. With its help, Port Venus had become the harbor with the best security. Crime rates were currently very low, which attracted even more merchants into business here. Leyland knew very well that even more trade was coming in. That was the result of eliminating the barbarians. Cousins should know that they can attack Pirates Cove and treat that area as an eternal base. Leyland placed the steaming cup on the table, a ruminating look on his expression. I never thought I would become the source and driving force of chaos in the outer sea. At this thought, Leyland could not help but look at the other item on the table. This was a pendant of a strange make, containing surging strength within. Yet, it had lost its own spiritual nature and turned into an enormous source of energy that anyone could use. Now that I've removed the conscient and sealed it, the god of murder shouldn't be able to sense it anymore, no. Leyland did not mention Siric's name. This was cautiousness on a fundamental level. Just mentioning a god's name would allow them to sense things. The information in the Wizards Guild stated that greater gods can obtain 15 to 18 words of information on the ones who call their true names, regardless of where they are. Leyland stroked his chin. This ability was somewhat similar to a part of the abilities of great rank 9 magi, who were capable of everything and knew everything. It was a pity that this was just a part of it, and was a unique law that had been generated specific to the world of gods. There were far too many ways to evade it. Also, such a tremendous divine force. What a huge gift. Leyland spread his fingers and began to rub on the surface of the pendant. Threads of chaotic energy had been transformed by his devouring power, becoming the purest dark gold. Leyland absorbed it unceasingly. Leyland now had given up the vulgar method of devouring everything at one go, and had switched his method to making fine adjustments and changes continuously. While the divine force of the god of murder was powerful, it seemed too impure, and the power of distorted shadow was continuously seeping in from it. What Leyland needed was to refine the purest divine force and use it on himself. As the divine force was poured into himself, a golden mist formed around Leyland, like he was a god cast of gold. The AI chip's prompts kept sounding out. Beep. Host has absorbed large amounts of energy essence, determined to be a greater god's divine force. Effect similar to eternal grace from the god. Host stats have increased, strength +1, agility +1, vitality +1. As the AI chip's robotic voice sounded, Leyland felt like his body had been enhanced. Terrifying strength burst forth from all his cells. As expected of a greater god's divine force, Leyland sighed with satisfaction. AI chip assess the value of all the divine force, he commanded. Beep. Mission established. Constructing model of host's body. Beginning simulations. The AI chip loyally carried out Leyland's orders. Within seconds, it had a comprehensive conclusion. Beep. Preliminary results show that the pendant will be used up completely in 145 H12 min. Host's average stats estimated to reach 15 will advance 1 rank as an Arcanist. Is that so? That's not bad. On top of that, Leyland saw the AI chip's prompt below. Beep. Analysis of level 5 weave at 100%. Host has obtained all rank 5 spell models, is now immune to forgetting spells. No materials needed to cast rank 5 spells. There was a new change to the AI chip's interface in the portion related to the progress on the weave. Analysis of weave. Level 0. 100% level 1, 100% level 2, 100% level 3, 100% level 4, 100% level 5, 100% level 6, 53.33%, level 7, 34.97%. So divine force is also effective at deciphering the weave. Leyland nodded. It also seems to have something to do with me becoming an Arcanist. Now that I've somewhat broken away from it, the analysis has quickened quite a bit. Becoming an Arcanist was a huge advancement for Leyland. It wasn't just a change in combat ability. He could now completely break through the weave that limited wizards. With the restrictions of the weave, high-ranked wizards after rank 15 would find advancing extremely difficult. Becoming a legendary was also incomparably harsh. It was easier for legendary warriors. Becoming a legendary wizard before turning 300 would already make one extremely young. Leyland had a feeling that, after experiencing the dusk of the gods and the rise of the Netheral Empire, the gods had consciously limited the abilities of the spellcasters and prevented them from improving and growing. However, this did not apply to Arcanists. As long as they had the theories and a foundation, as well as enough resources, there was nothing stopping Arcanists from advancing. However, the difficulty for Arcanists lay in constructing theories applying to the higher ranks or even legendaries. This was much harder than for wizards. In ancient times, the difficulty in Arcanists advancing far exceeded that of the wizards, but Leyland was different. His main body was a near-rank 7 Magus of laws. His foundation was extremely solid for the non-limited arcane arts. With enough capabilities, he could constantly improve. With the recuperation of his body and restoration of his law of devouring, as well as Siric's bishop's altruistic offering, he was pushed into the fast lane of advancement. Only legendaries are high-end battle powers in the prime material plane. I must become a legendary as soon as possible. Only then will I have the confidence and capital to separate the outer seas. When it came to his future development and plans, Leyland practically had a complete set of steps to follow. Before this, I need to crack down on the faith of the natives and the various devil and demon worshippers, as well as the followers of evil gods. Leyland got up slowly, the great energy in his body turning into terrifying streams of air in the private room. I'll need to alter my outer appearance. It wouldn't be fun to be misunderstood as related to the god of murder. With a thought, all of Leyland's divine force was converted into the purest energy. The faint golden light on his skin completely disappeared. "Master, the guests have arrived outside the tower." The tower genie spoke respectfully, her little face appearing at this moment. "I'll greet them myself," Leyland nodded. He headed outside the wizard tower and saw the figure of Gold Priest Xena. Beside her were the priests of a few other churches, though they were only around rank 10. "Bishop Xena, everyone else, welcome to my wizard tower." Leyland had a cordial smile on his face. In that moment, it was as if spring had arrived and all sorts of beautiful flowers were blooming. This power of influence, how terrifying. What state is his spiritual force in now? While having shock in her eyes, Xena similarly revealed a smile. "Lord Baron, you're too courteous. As guests, our gifts are lacking. This isn't good manners." Meeting after giving them a tour of the tower, Leyland brought the priests to the drawing room. The metallic golems arrived quickly, presenting tea and snacks in elven porcelain. "May I know why Lord Baron invited us here?" Xena took a look at these golems that were about as strong as rank 10 professionals and increased Leyland's rating in her mind. Beside her, as a representative of the Goddess of Wealth's church, there were also priests from the gods of knowledge and suffering. However, Xena was the highest ranked, and the influence of the Goddess of Wealth was the greatest here. It allowed her to act on behalf of the other two. "Before all that, I'd first like to give you 2 gifts." Leyland clapped, and another golem came forward, placing 2 boxes in front of them. Once they were opened, a pungent smell wafted out with large amounts of lime powder. It caused Xena to furrow her brows. She slowly drew closer. "This is..." She suddenly took several steps backwards after seeing what was inside. "Ah, it's actually..." If Xena had reacted that way, the other 2 priests had even larger reactions. "Lord Leyland, are you using this to scare us?" Xena's tone was of dissatisfaction as the box contained 2 sinister heads. Showing heads to these priests was no sign of goodwill. "Hee, I'm obviously not offending you. Please take a closer look." Leyland had an easy smile on his face. After confirming that Leyland would not fall out with the Church of Wealth, Xena endured the nausea and discomfort and began to observe the sinister faces in the box. After taking a closer look, she found something was wrong. This." The 2 other priests also seemed to have noticed something as well, delight showing on their expressions. "Lord Leyland, this is..." The priest of the god of suffering, Avdonia, began sounding unsure. "Indeed, this is the high-ranked assassin that killed numerous men of the clergy during the pirates' tide." Leyland pointed at the box on the left. "As for the one next to him, it is the bishop of the god of murder hidden in the outer seas, Gisfano." "Ha! On behalf of all my comrades that met harm, I thank you." Xena covered the boxes and sighed. The 2 other priests also thanked him happily. During the pirates' tide, the god of murder had dispatched his subordinates to assassinate those of godly duties without regard. This had resulted in massive losses on the god's end. The churches that the 3 priests in front of Leyland represented were also included in the scope of the attacks, so it could be said that they had a feud with these 2 people. The fact that Leyland had given them these 2 heads as gifts made them rather pleased. "Well then, what does Lord Leyland wish to speak about?" The priest that had come in the bishop of the god of knowledge's stead was one that looked like an elderly scholar. The man called Salilus questioned Leyland with an intelligent glint in his eyes. After hearing his words, Xena and Avdonia focused on Leyland. "Actually, these 2 heads were surprises that I obtained when exterminating the notorious barbarians." Leyland explained slightly. "The barbarians? You mean the culprit that started the pirates' tide, causing heavy casualties in the outer seas?" "They've been wiped out." Xena was rather surprised, while Leyland snickered inside. By defaming the barbarians over the long term, especially with the king's announcement, the barbarians were now complete criminals. There was no way to absolve themselves of this reputation. They weren't just pirates, they were connected with the god of murder's church, Leyland declared, which then earned him flattery reserved for young heroes from Salalis. But when Leyland continued, however, his tone completely changed, which made the three priests aware that Leyland was about to come to the main point. I believe that the outer seas as they are right now are in urgent need of a purge of faith in evil gods. This applies especially to those pirates and natives. Leyland spoke in a low voice, his true intentions now revealed. A purge of faith. The three of them exchanged glances in their surprise. Yes, a purge, Leyland nodded resolutely. While he treated the outer seas as his trump card, he could not offend all of the gods. Cyric and Maler's reputations were rotten to the core, so that didn't matter, but the few churches on Fallen Island needed to be roped into his side. They could be considered as the fallen family's natural allies. As for the unlucky bishop of the god of murder, Leyland was sorry to say that he could only be treated as just another stepping stone. Also, when it comes to dealing blows to the devils and demons, there are many ways we can cooperate in the future. I myself have come up with many new spell formations to detect demons and devils. Leyland looked extremely furious. Getting the favor of the good faction via proclaiming his wish to attack the devils and demons was a part of his plan. He could keep subduing them in the shadows to expand his strength, which made it like killing two birds with one stone. Oh. Please allow us to discuss this for a while. Xena looked towards the priests beside her and answered, finding herself put in a spot. From Leyland's actions, it was apparent that he was making a declaration to dominate the outer seas. Most importantly, with the annihilation of the barbarians and uprooting the god of murder's church, there now seemed to be no other opposing forces on the sea. As those of the clergy, they would first have to consider the benefits to their churches. Everything else was secondary. Unifying the outer sea and cracking down on faith in evil gods and devils was unquestionably beneficial for the gods they had faith in. Of course, this was only if they stood on the same side as Leyland and worked together with him. He has the ability to destroy the barbarians in secret. Seems like the rumors that the fallen family has control over the Scarlet Tigers is true. Xena glanced at Leyland, who was all smiles, and pondered over this. With huge armed fleets on the surface and a pirate group in the shadows, as well as huge trade benefits and shipping routes supporting him, it is undeniable that he shall be king of the outer seas. Rejecting his goodwill at this time is very unfavorable to the goddess' upcoming plans. Xena was actually very unwilling to see a single organization becoming the dictator of the outer seas. She would rather this region be a place for free trade. However, she was currently left without choice. The moment she infuriated a large organization like this capable of unifying the outer seas, there would be a huge blow to trades in this region. This was also disadvantageous to the spread of faith in the goddess of wealth. Xena kept weighing her options. But attacking the evil gods, devils, and demons. Xena shot Leyland a glance. While she had no clue what he was actually thinking, doing this meant she could tell what faction Leyland was in. At the very least, he was not on opposing ends with the goddess of wealth. In this regard, please give me some time, my lord. I need to discuss this with other members before I can make a decision. While she already had a general inclination to agree, Xena still answered this way. The same goes for us. At the other side, Salalis and Avdonia gave the same answer. Of course, this is just my intent. My family also has no plans of sending out troops on a large scale as of yet. Leyland knew that these priests needed the permissions of their churches and even gods, which was why he didn't pressure them. Whatever it was, this would be beneficial to them. He was sure that those with foresight could see this. As for the new detection spell and spell formations that you mentioned. Before leaving, Xena displayed her strong interest in what Leyland had mentioned. Those are things I put research into and created unwittingly. They're about half a fold more effective than ancient detection techniques, and the same goes for the range. Leyland spoke indifferently, but that only caused the priest's eyes to glint. Demons and devils were the most hated beings in the prime material plane of the world of gods. Altars and spells that could detect and distinguish them, especially those as effective and with as large a range as Leyland had said, were definitely the dreams of the churches. To be able to create new spells alone. I was actually doubtful of my lord's talent in spells, but my doubts have been set aside. The priest of the god of knowledge, Salalis, spoke with conviction. Even if it was the simplest distinguishing and detection spells, Being able to create a whole new spell model meant that Leyland's knowledge in terms of spells had reached a very profound level. Wizards like these were more capable of reaching the realm of legendaries. This was how it was recorded in many documents. Leyland had exhibited his abilities here, and Salalis could not help but brighten up. Many thanks for the praise. I can discuss matters related to this more comprehensively if you wish to. Leyland was, on the surface, still a follower of Ogma. Naturally, he had to give this bishop preferential treatment, as well as give the other two some pressure. Of course, of course. Salalis nodded with his eyes wide, while the other two looked wary. After sending the three priests away, Leyland strolled back to his room. There aren't any more issues in persuading them, he thought. I'll have a reason to purge the outer seas and call for help. All that's left is to make preparations. By purging the faith of the natives in the outer seas and stealing their soul strength, he could constantly advance, speeding up his contact with the legendary realm. In the meanwhile, he could also expunge the devils and demons. This was Leyland's main plan that would never change. Demon Experiment Fallen Island, the basement of the Wizard Tower, within the negative energy pool. This was a place where wizards conducted taboo experiments with dimensional spell formations specifically to summon demons and devils. Hence, a powerful binding formation was an essential protective measure for this place, researching demons and devils. Obviously, once priests or paladins found out, he would become a wanted man, a sinner that all the humans would call out. It was a pity that most high-ranked wizards had to make use of negative energy to advance. There were few who followed some lesser-known paths. After becoming a legendary wizard, those madmen might even completely disregard the gods and brazenly go against their ban, becoming involved in the domain of arcane spells. In the eyes of those strictly forbidden scholars, the gods were merely a group of powerful wizards. Who exactly was up there was a function of luck and one's birth. Due to their pursuit of truth and their research, wizards often harbored thoughts of becoming treacherous and were hated by the gods to the bone. They had then done all they could to create the weave in order to limit the spellcasters. Unfortunately, even with the annihilation of Netheril and the crippling of most wizards through the weave, legendary wizards still walked the path of doubting the gods. The immense pressure they exerted caused even more vigorous backlash, which was in a way very ironic. A dimensional summoning spell formation. While I can only summon beings from various planes within the crystal sphere, it's still not bad. Leyland now stood at the edge of a spell formation with various runes drawn all over it, possessing an inquiring look on his face. After sending the three priests away, he focused entirely on research in arcane spells. He was already a rank 16 arcanist, and it was obvious that he would perform practical experiments in this area. There seems to be a very powerful limitation in summoning spells within the world of gods. There are also different factions. Of course, anyone can summon demons as long as they are controlled well after that. Leyland murmured to himself and activated the runes on the spell formation. Though it's my first time using this, I guess I'll summon demons. After all, I've gotten familiar with devils, but haven't gotten the chance to observe demons myself. Demon summoning. As this was the first time, Leyland had not planned to summon a particularly powerful demon. However, after casting the spell, he suddenly found his spiritual force connecting with a large, deep, dark, and chaotic plane. Is this the Abyss? This power of space and chaos? The Abyss was currently known to have hundreds of layers, and most of it was definitely undiscovered. There were even rumors that the 9th level of Hell had initially been part of the Abyss and been separated. With Leyland's current spiritual force, it was impossible for him to advance too far into the Abyss, even with spells and spell formations supporting him. He could only tour the surface layers. There's a confusing and chaotic soul aura here, but it feels infinitely tiny. This should be a type of abyssal worm. That's too weak. But then this one is too powerful. I think it's approaching the rank of legendary. Everything is so different. I give up. With his fine spiritual force control, Leyland had more choices than other wizards. Finally, after generally searching the area, he found his target. A powerful soul aura and a strength that isn't too strong or too weak. It's you. Summon. The planar coordinates locked onto the target, and Leyland saw a teleportation gate opening. A strange, terrifying demon was teleported over. Kukaka. What entered Leyland's sights was a huge demon that looked more like a bald eagle on 2 legs. It was completely naked and had large wings on its back, the disgusting red chicken skin evident. Its human arms were tipped by incredibly sharp claws. It did not hesitate to attack once it saw Leyland. The bloodlust, chaos, and insanity within the soul caused his eyes to widen slightly. This should be a Vrock. While evolved from abyssal worms, it should be considered a mid-ranked demon. On top of that, this amount of chaos and level of attack. HMPH. Leyland huffed. The binding spell formation he had prepared beforehand flickered with dazzling light. Tens of lightning rays formed a huge prison. The Vrock's talons clashed with the electricity, and it immediately caused a huge sound. Large amounts of black flames began to blaze within, causing even the Vrock to retreat pitifully. There was finally some fear in its eyes. This guy only knows to be tough on the weak, but is afraid when treated harshly. Leyland shook his head, his right index finger pressing on his temple. AI chip scan it and gather data. Beep. Mission established. Beginning scan. The AI chip loyally carried out Leyland's commands. Soon enough, a 3D scan appeared in front of Leyland detailing its stats. Name unknown. Race, Vrock Tannery strength. 16 agility, 17 vitality, 15 spirit, 13 feats, 1 demon skin 2. Flight 3. Corrosive aura 4. Ability similar to magic. Description: this is a mid-rank demon. There is chaos and evil of the abyss in its very soul. Unless its mind is controlled, one will definitely be met with a powerful counterattack. It's the model of a high-ranked professional, and its stats in all areas surpass them. Leyland evaluated dully, and then saw its faction lights and soul temperament. What kind of insane and chaotic soul is this? It even has such an evil feeling. It had to be said that while he'd heard of this before, actually meeting one had Leyland losing completely hope in demons. They're just a bunch of evil lunatics with power in their hands. After seeing its temperament, Leyland finally understood why the demons kept losing in the bloody battles with devils. While they were all evil existences, these beings that hid within chaos were just unworthy of his attention. The chaotic temperament from the abyss, where is this coming from? Leyland had a searching look in his eyes. He observed the Vrock trapped by the binding formation, the intense gaze causing even the insane demon to feel some fear. I don't have much time, but I do have patience for my first specimen. Leyland had an apathetic expression as a small, silver surgical knife and other tools suddenly appeared in his hands. While the flesh itself is filled with a filthy power of chaos, the temperament of demons seems to be rooted in the soul itself. The laboratory was now completely empty, and there were only blood-stained bits of bone left here. Some creatures' last wails seemed to linger in the area, filling the place with a frightening aura. However, this did not affect Leyland at all. After washing away the blood and dirt on his hands, he focused on studying the potion in the test tube he held. A dark red liquid could be seen in the test tube, a dark light within shining with varying amounts of intensity as he shook the tube. It seemed evil and frightening. This is the potion that was made from extracting the demon's energy. AI chip. Leyland's eyes twinkled as he ordered. Beep. Item name, middle demon potion. Effect. Raises vitality and strength of all beings below 10 points by 1 point. For those with these stats below 15 points, vitality and strength increases by 0.5. Ineffective for all professionals above rank 15. Description. This is a potion with powerful demonic energy. Drink it if strength is desired, although be fearless of the corruption to your soul. You might fall to the abyss forever. Not a bad result. What a pity, Leyland sighed. While this potion was pretty good at boosting his underlings' strength, the demonic corruption that would result was a huge issue. If he wanted to continue working in the prime material plane, then his underlings could not be a group of demons. However, his underlings could not be too weak either. He was preparing to nurture talents for the church he would build. What a bother. While I'm unafraid of such corruption, it won't be the same for others, Leyland muttered. I need to adjust the soul to remove the corruption, which would increase the costs too much. This can only be used as a reward and not an ordinary potion to be passed down. And the abyss. Leyland stroked his chin, recalling that mighty surge of chaos he had felt before. Chaos is a rather powerful law. After grasping it, I might even be able to command strength even more powerful than greater gods and work together with the abyss. Unfortunately, it doesn't suit me at all. I should head to the abyss and hell after becoming legendary to take a look. With Leyland's abilities, the abyss and hell were good choices to reincarnate in. However, Leyland had pondered over this and then given up. Compared to the prime material plane, these two areas were far too dangerous. There were battles everywhere and basically no peace whatsoever. Right after reincarnating, Leyland would be at his weakest. How could he gamble on this? Even if I wanted to try my luck, would I, an invader, still be cared for by the world will? Leyland had a feeling that even while the world will was in a deep sleep, its malicious intent towards Magi would not disappear so easily. However, with his law of devouring, he would certainly be able to let his talents shine if he were to enter the abyss and hell. Leyland had no hesitations when it came to that. Intermediate perfect body within a dim room. Powerful golden divine force was raging like stormy waves as it gushed out of a small statue. It was then absorbed by a huge black vortex in midair. Completely transformed, a pure energy gathered at the body of a quiet figure sitting there. Powerful divine force condensed to form a faint figure of light, a thread of divinity sparkling as it emerged. The analysis of divine force has slowly given me information over divinity. Leyland pondered over this. In the eyes of Magi, this so-called godhood was merely an elementary understanding of the power of laws. A true god had comprehended one law completely. From there, one would ignite their godfire to join the ranks of the other true gods, a process improving comprehension of laws as they grasped them. But the world of gods has unique rules of their own. With the power of faith, comprehension of the laws can be hastened. The power of laws possessed after becoming a true god can also be boosted through faith. With the comprehension of laws as the core, one can rob or present this divinity that comes from faith. It was extremely difficult for the inhabitants of the world of gods to surpass the limitations on their own bodies and obtain divinity. Unless one was lucky enough to get into the good graces of the gods or pick up a divine weapon with divinity hidden inside, this was basically impossible. However, having already grasped the true essence of laws, Magi didn't find it too difficult to create divinity as long as they had enough materials. Honestly speaking, divine force is actually the material to form divinity. It takes other gods too much energy to transform it, to the point that they're unwilling to do so. Leyland studied the statue in his hands. The divine force within was almost completely depleted. Even with all the divine force stored inside being able to raise my average stats, I still can't form any real divinity, Leyland muttered to himself. After absorbing all the divine force within the statue, his strength had improved just a bit. He now had a better understanding of Siric's godly duties and domain, but he still could not condense divinity. This was not an issue in technique, but just that there weren't enough pure ingredients. By his estimation, he would require all the divine force from a god's avatar to condense the divinity he needed. Eliminating an avatar, Leyland stroked his chin, beginning to ponder over the feasibility of this matter. It wasn't possible for a god to descend on the prime material plane in their true body. Their personifications were at most high-ranked legendaries and saints, about as strong as rank 5 or 6 magi. They would also lose their holiness, and could therefore be killed. Of course, even the avatar wasn't someone Leyland could deal with easily. I completely understand Siric's divine force, Leyland reflected. With multiple domains like murder, massacres, conspiracies, and death, he has entered the ranks of the greater gods. An avatar from him would be the cream of the crop. In Leyland's eyes, however, of all of Siric's laws, the only ones Leyland found worthy were those of massacre and death. These two domains were very formidable, and they were what Siric had relied on to enter the ranks of the greater gods. It would take a tremendous amount of divine force to condense a divinity in these domains. Even if he's gone insane, this is still far too difficult. I should change my target. Ever since Leyland had started out here, he had only offended two gods, the god of the hunt, Malor, and the god of murder, Siric. This had naturally been done after some pondering. As the path he had chosen caused conflict with these two gods, becoming hostile was obvious. Malor is only a lesser god, and his avatar would be easier to deal with. I don't want anything to do with his domain of hunting, but it won't be hard to transform it into a divinity in massacres. Only middle gods and above in the world of gods could transform divinity between similar fields. However, any rank 8 Magus could do so. This was the result of differences in comprehending laws. With Leyland's temperament, those benevolent and honest roles meant nothing to him. Not only was his soul unsuitable for that, it would also pollute his path to becoming a rank 8 Magus. Hence, he had few choices. With research on ancient magi like distorted shadow, he now had a better understanding of his own path. My path is definitely inclined towards evil for this world. Will I completely walk the path of a rebel? Leyland stroked his chin. Based on the novels from my previous world, rebels never lead good lives. That's rather interesting. But the power of devils will definitely gives rise to massacres and death. That's rather fitting. The corner of Leyland's lips suddenly turned up in an evil smile. He did not fear sin on his path to eternity, nor did he mind grasping evil laws. Boom! At this moment, the miniature statue in his hands exploded. His continued absorption over this period of time had completely exhausted the divine force within. Is it depleted already? Leyland closed his eyes. The cells all over his body greedily absorbed this pure energy that had been transformed, and there was even a huge improvement on a genetic level. At this moment, the AI chip's robotic voice sounded. Beep. Host has absorbed pure energy, effect similar to eternal grace from the god. Strength +1, agility +2, vitality +1, spirit +1. Host's spiritual force has broken through, rank increasing. Host is now a rank 17 arcanist. Arcane energy +10. Obtained spell slots, rank 8 1, rank 7 1, rank 6 1, rank 5 1. All his stats had now exceeded 15. Power erupted in Leyland's body, and it felt as if every cell was dancing in elation as if they had broken through their shackles. Beep. Host stats have all reached 15. Feat elementary perfect body has become intermediate perfect body. The AI chip's prompt continued to show. Afterwards, the explanation of the perfect body feat was refreshed. Intermediate perfect body. Host's genes have been optimized. Characteristics of exemplary beings has been strengthened, and host has obtained mid-rank resistance to toxins, fire, cold, and corrosion. Endurance in varying environments has been increased by large degree. Leyland's stats changed. Leyland fallen. Age 22. Race human, rank 17 arcanist. Strength 15, agility 15, vitality 15, spirit 17. Arcane energy 170, status healthy, feats sturdy, erudite, intermediate perfect body. Specialties arcane energy detection, arcane amplification. Spell slots rank 8 1, rank 7 3, rank 6 6, rank 5, rank 4, rank 3, rank 2, rank 1. Rank 0. Analysis of weave. Level 0 100%, Level 1 100%, Level 2 100%, Level 3 100%, Level 4 100%, Level 5 100%, Level 6 53.33%, Level 7 34.97%, Level 8 0.11%. So all of the divine force and demon potions recently have allowed me to rise to this point. Leyland nodded, looking satisfied. The rise in his arcanist ranking allowed him to reduce the consumption needed for arcane spells. Besides, for rank 9 arcane spells, he would not need to pay any price at all. The rise in his wizard ranking also allowed him to obtain a rank 8 spell slot, which was pretty good. And then, intermediate perfect body. Leyland wondered about this. The advancement in his perfect body meant he was transforming into a higher grade life form. Once he became a legendary, he would probably get a greater perfect body or even legendary perfect body as his feat. Even those old legends must have endured long periods of training to improve their stats, allowing them to possess a legendary perfect body. However, at the rate that I'm improving, my feat with the perfect body alone after becoming a legendary would allow me to catch up to legendaries who have been amassing strength for so long. Also, a powerful vessel would allow me to make preparations to take on more power. Leyland had a feeling that once his perfect body reached the legendary domain, there would be huge advantages to absorbing divinity and even igniting his godfare to become a god. Whether it's the remaining evil organizations in the outer seas or dealing with the god of murder, all this would require me harnessing great power. The fallen family might have become a king of the outer seas, but lacked the power to completely control the situation. Only by quickly becoming a legendary could he fearlessly take on the attack from the god of murder's church, and therefore make the outer seas a solid foundation for him to become a god. My speed of advancement is already very fast. If I want to continue, the only method would be making use of the faith of the natives in the outer seas.